During a normal inspection, a teenage patrol police officer stopped the hearse. The driver was then instructed to open the casket by him. You'll find the sequence of events that ensued terrifying. Danielle was sent by the side of the road that evening, when all of a sudden, a hearse came into view. It was out of the ordinary, and Danielle had an idea. He had lately watched a movie in which drug dealers transported narcotics in a hearse rather than a body. Is this opportunity he's been waiting for? Is this the opportunity he's been waiting for to prove himself and find a genuine crime? Danielle's peers frequently made fun of him, since in his 10 months of highway patrol, he had not solved any significant crimes. He watched movies in an attempt to hone his professional instincts and get insight from fictitious detectives since he was desperate to be accepted by them. Perhaps this might finally be profitable. Danielle gestured for the driver of the hearse to halt. Beaming with joy, the young police officer asked the driver what was in the casket. After introducing himself, it was a casket carrying a dead body, the driver said. With a hint of arrogance, Danielle gave the driver the command to open the casket. After becoming dissatisfied with his arrogant response, the policeman became even more suspicious. When the driver paused, Danielle said that the police had received a tip concerning hearses carrying illicit items. Therefore, all hearses were being examined that day. In an attempt to scare the driver and gauge his response, Danielle felt more confident as the driver got angrier. He pictured the hearse full with illicit or clandestine goods. The young police officer, fed up with the driver's refusal to obey, pulled out his service gun, aimed it in the driver's direction, and gave the order to open the casket. He prayed this wouldn't be like the action movies he'd seen before, when a little intimidation might go a long way towards solving a case. The driver, the gun barrel aimed directly at him, grudgingly opened the casket. To see what was inside, Danielle looked inside, watching the driver as his joy gave way to disappointment. Nothing was missing from the coffin, not even money, not guns, not even bags or drugs. Just a young blonde woman, resting calmly. A mixture of remorse and annoyance overcame Danielle. As he holstered his pistol, the individual suddenly seemed innocent, while appearing to be epitome of criminal scammer. The driver was eager to go back in the driver's seat. Pleased that the nightmare was done, Danielle became curious. Because of his impatience, Danielle found the driver's actions strange. Even after seeing an innocent event, something didn't feel right, and he started to wonder where the hearse was going. The driver, irritated, replied that he was going to cemetery. The answer did not deceive Danielle. He probed further, inquiring as to the young woman's cause of death and the cemetery he was going to. The young woman, according to the driver, was a heart attack victim who was an isolated alcoholic. Danielle's good sense picked up on the disparity right away. The young lady did not appear to be a habitual drinker, and there seemed to be discrepancy in her death. She appeared to have died suddenly, since she was wearing pajamas. It appeared as though she had been thrown into the casket without any prior planning or attention. Danielle thought the young woman could have been the victim of a darker game. His discrimination to find the truth grew as he gave it more attention. When he inquired more about the woman's family, the man quickly answered that she had, just as Danielle opened his mouth to ask why the woman was dressed in pajamas. The driver struck him in the head. With such force that he lost consciousness instantly. After a few minutes, Danielle became aware that he was sleeping close to the dead woman and began to fear. When he woke up inside the coffin, he was filled with fear because he couldn't determine which was worse, being locked in a closed casket or being in a closed quarters with a dead body. The situation grew more dire as the hearse rattled down the uneven gravel road. Danielle was stuck with nowhere to run, and his breathing getting harder and harder. As he tried to catch his breath, Danielle dug through his pockets, desperately looking for a way out, and discovered his phone. He tried to phone someone, but that day, bad luck was with him. The signal was absent. Danielle heard a moan. Just as he thought the worst was over, initially he believed that his imagination was playing tricks on him, but the noise returned, and it was obvious then that the deceased woman was the one making the groans. Danielle was terrified. It was quite brave of him not to shout. Danielle had a suspicion that the woman might not have died. Once the first shock subsided, he took her pulse slowly, as he had anticipated, and sure enough, there was one. The woman was alive. Even if she was unconscious, Danielle realized he needed to move fast. There was a risk to the young woman's life, and as well as his. Danielle hit the lid of the coffin with a newfound sense of optimism, but there was little possibility that anybody would hear him. Driving at night on the highway, the car finally stopped. After what seemed like an age, Danielle started plotting his next move. Right away, he prepared to fling himself at the driver, expecting him to open the casket, but when he heard the voices of two more people, his hopes were dashed. Sadly, the motorist was not alone. The casket was removed from the vehicle by the driver and his companions. They approached the cemetery with caution and lowered the casket into a recently excavated trench. Danielle was so angry that he yelled at the crooks to open the casket. He made threats to hold them accountable for their deeds, but his comments were ignored. The guys buried Daniel and the unconscious woman alive. By filling the casket with soil, in a matter of minutes, Danielle kicked the casket and screamed in helplessness. But the bandits had no regrets. Danielle could no longer hear the man's words, and the mud pouring stopped. Just when all hope seemed gone, Danielle was certain he had never heard this voice before. When around 10 minutes later, he heard it again, then someone started trying to open the casket. Danielle quickly switched on the flashlight on his phone and pointed it at the girl, who was resting next to him. It surprised him when she opened her eyes. She obeyed his prompt request to be silent and still. Simone, the guardian of the cemetery, was the one trying to unlock the casket. He'd seen the hearse pull up next to a recently excavated shallow grave. He'd noticed the driver and his companions looking about with suspicion, and he saw right away that something was wrong. He watched from his hiding point as they threw the casket into the just excavated hole and began to bury it. The burial, inadequately excavated, filled Simone with even greater mistrust. Simone made the decision to confirm who was being buried. In order to solve the mystery, in an attempt to locate any proof, he crept up to the hearse and peeked inside, and he was shocked to see the handgun on the floor mat next to the driver's seat. Simone realized he needed to exercise caution. Since this implied the undertakers were armed and dangerous, Simone felt this was his moment to aid whoever was in the coffin. When the crooks came out of the grave for a little while to get some wine and talk about their intentions, he crept into the small hole, opened the coffin, and let the woman with the blonde hair and Danielle out. Danielle sprang out, snatched the shovel, and ran over to where the lawbreakers were diverted. He smacked the driver of the head with the shovel, knocking him down. The two other crooks were then effectively subdued by the police officer and the man. Before they could take back control, thankfully, Danielle's phone was suddenly receiving a signal. He made a swift call for assistance and an ambulance to guarantee that the offenders would be apprehended. The blonde-haired woman who the crooks had tried to bury alive was, according to the police inquiry, an affluent young woman named Magda. Her spouse had set out to have her killed, paying the guy to do it so he would inherit her wealth. The spouse was taken into custody after the perpetrators admitted to their roles in the crime. Now that the lawsuit had been settled, Magda was secure and appreciative of her rescue. Danielle, the courageous police officer, and she grew close. Their common experience served to strengthen their bond and finally resulted in a love connection. Danielle was promoted for his daring and astute observation. After his remarkable episode won him the respect and admiration of his peers. Together, Danielle and Magda had a bright future ahead of them, and they were determined to conquer any obstacles.